to recognize two people who've passed away in the past week. The first one is very, very close to the SCA family. John Singleton passed away today, and to just show you how much of a cinephile and lover of movies he was, he had RSVP'd for this screening. Oh. So it's really heartbreaking. Someone who was in our lives very directly, very frequently, and he's really going to be missed. We also lost a member of the Alien family this week. Editor Terry Rollins passed away last week, and again, it's particularly sad because my colleague Michael Pizer and I had just been talking to Terry, who was living in England, apparently enjoying his retirement. So it was obviously quite sad to lose him. And if you haven't heard Terry speak, he is in many of the videos over at the exhibit, and he has a lot of really great, fascinating things to say about making Alien. So in their memory, I just want to thank them for helping, and John especially for being such a huge presence here at the School of Cinematic Arts. And now I'd like to welcome a man who's most famous for putting up the urinals in our bathrooms. I don't want to stir up any controversy here, but I think that within the Alien fan community, the great debate is Alien over Aliens.
This is the better movie.
So, I'm not going to argue that they're not both masterpieces, but I happen to think that Alien is an all-time perfect film and one of my top 5 favorite movies. But Tim, immediately when he saw that I was doing this, he was like, I have to do Aliens, it's one of my favorite movies, and I thought, you know what, I would much rather have Tim moderate this discussion than sit up there on stage and think that, what I would have missed coming out of Tim's mouth tonight. So let's welcome up Tim Dowling to say hello, and then we'll get started.
Well, first off, I'd say let's have a big round of applause for Alex August, who set up this whole Alien series in that amazing exhibit in the lobby. And Alex, whether you know or not, provides the programming that happens each and every week here, which is pretty amazing. When I went to school here, this didn't exist, and I think it's pretty amazing, the stuff that Alex does week in, week out. So thank you, Alex. And yes, he's correct. I was so excited about this. And we do a Movies We Love program, and I always want to do a Movies We Love of Aliens, which is one of my favorite films of all time. I actually saw this movie, I think I was 12. I don't know how I got into this R-rated film. When I was a kid, I saw it before Alien, the original one, and this it was the tensest movie I've ever seen then and now. And the movie's long, and I knew the runtime, and I think it's like 2 hours and 20 minutes or something. And I would... Good job. I was looking at my watch as sitting there in this tense theater, like counting down the minutes till this movie was done. That I was loving because it was so intense and crazy and scary. And I'm really excited for you guys to see it on the big screen tonight. And I'm really excited to talk to these amazing panelists after. I think personally it's one of the few sequels that's actually better than the original, which we can talk about later. And Alex and I disagree about. And one last thing that Alex mentioned John Singleton. And I was gonna say is like for me growing up, like Boys in the Hood, was such this amazing seminal film, and we always heard about George Lucas and Robert Zemeckis coming from FC, but someone young like John that like made this amazing movie here was one of the reasons that I came out here. And I had the pleasure of meeting him once or twice, and he's a super nice guy. And at the big USC panel a couple weeks ago, he said something that I loved, which is, and it sort of goes to the reason that Alex and I started the Movies We Love program, is that John said that his favorite thing at SC was being able to see great movies up on the big screen with an audience, the way that they're meant to be seen. And he said that even the past few years, he would call the dean in the beginning of every semester and said, send me the screening schedule. And he wanted to know every movie that was screening in classes, and he would come a lot of times and sneak in the back just to watch great movies up on the big screen, which is such a privilege that we have here. So, very sad at his passing. Dedicate the screening tonight to John. So, anyway, guys, thank you.
We have Reiser, Jenette Goldstein, Ricco Ross, and Henriksen. We have feature effects supervisor Alec, Gillis, and miniatures technical supervisor McClung.
To this one, drink this one.
Hi, everybody.
Guys, thank you so much for coming down here. The movie played great. It was so much fun seeing it on the big screen again. So, I was telling them before, I think this is probably the best sequel ever made, and I personally think it's actually better than the original, which is very, very rare. But at the time this came out, sequels were not quite as common as they were today, especially 7 years later. I just, for each of you guys, what did you think when you first heard they were making a sequel to Aliens, and also how did each of you come to this project? Lance, you want to start?
Okay.
Jeanette, would you like to?
Me? Oh, me. I didn't realize it was a sequel to Aliens. What, you're laughing?
This is new. This is good.
Well, I didn't have an agent. I was living in London, and they said that there's a movie called Aliens, and but the reason I didn't think, 1 second I thought, oh yeah, could it be a sequel? But 7, 8 years later, nah. The reason I didn't think it was, they were looking for specifically Americans who had a British equity card. And in England, your green card is called your resident alien card. Huh. So I just was like, maybe it's about, kind of the underground Americans, they marry someone to get their green card, and that's what I thought.
Wait, so were you a local hire? Is that?
Yes, I was a local hire.
Oh, wow, okay.
I wasn't.
All right, so Lance, you've worked with James Cameron before.
Yeah, I did, a couple of times, yeah. When Alien came out, I thought, that's the best movie I've ever seen. I mean, I could smell it. It really was a great departure from getting injected into somebody's arm and going looking for cancer in their body,
That movie.
And it was, the one?
I loved it.
You did?
Yes.
Ew. Anyway, but Alien was this is my girlfriend, by the way, in Near Dark. Yeah, it's definitely. But anyway, Ridley Scott had done something that hadn't been done. It was an A movie about science fiction. What he did. So I was impressed. And then, actually, I was supposed to meet with him, but I was doing Close Encounters, and I was in India. So I never got to do the meeting. So
Do you remember
I'm glad about Bishop.
Do you remember which part in the original you wrote for?
I don't know. I never look back. I don't know. I have no idea. But it was. It could have been. One or the other.
Yeah. Well, I think it worked out. You made the right choice. Bishop's a great character.
Yeah, I'll go next. I don't want to follow Paul. It was luck that I got the job because I had just gotten cast before this job. I had gotten cast in Full Metal Jacket, but we hadn't closed on the deal. And then I had seen James before, but there was no offer, so I was about to accept the offer for Full Metal Jacket. And then James said, "Before you accept anything, please come back and see me." And I came back and we talked, and I ended up having to choose because it overlapped 1 week. And James says, "Well, I'll let you come 1 week late if Kubrick releases you," but Kubrick wouldn't release, so I had to decide, and there goes the story.
What was the part in Full Metal Jacket? Was it a good role?
It was a good role, but the script, I think the script wasn't completely written, and he basically said that you'll be playing Officer or Lieutenant Cleveland, and we're going to have these workshops, and whatever you bring to it is what's going to be in the movie. And, as an actor, that's a challenge you look for. So I was really, and James, as big as James is now, at the time of this movie, James really wasn't that well known, and Kubrick was very well known. So of course, I was leaning toward Stanley Kubrick.
But you made the right move, because not only did Full Metal Jacket overlap with Aliens, it overlapped with everything. It was like a 9-year shoot. That's right. And they were just tired, and they had babies who were growing up. That was at least a 2-year shoot.
It was a hell of a long shoot.
Yeah, so you got out of there in a couple of months.
Exactly.
Well. Funny about the Alien cut, I remember because it was like the biggest thing, and I said, wow, I'm in a real movie. This is big time. They have cameras and everything. And then when I got in the airport, and then the guy said, resident or alien? I went, man, everybody knows about this one. I didn't know that term.
Did you audition, or did he know your stand-up work? Or?
I think he had seen me in Beverly Hills Cop, which makes no freaking sense at all. But I think his idea was to get somebody that you might not suspect of being evil. And I auditioned. I didn't audition. I think I just met. I don't think there was much to the role. And then I didn't hear from him for months, so I just assumed it was gone. And 4 months later, because they said they had to look at everybody in England, and apparently there is nobody like me in England, in the entire continent. And so I remember but I had to jog my memories. Remember that
They did
meeting?
the same thing to me.
Really?
They did, yeah. I mean, that's the way of getting your price down.
Well, it worked.
Lance, did you read? Did you audition, or?
I had to audition,
Okay.
and I'd already done 2 movies with Jim. So it was like, really? You know, I was kind of hurt, but I auditioned.
I auditioned with the role of Hudson.
And he said nobody in England could do what you just did, so that's it.
That's what I was going to ask you guys. For something like this, did you read for your particular part, or did you read for a bunch of different parts, or like once that's you read for Bishop? You read for Hudson?
Well, no, actually, I read. I was told I wasn't reading for Vasquez. I was reading for either the pilot or Cynthia's role, Dietrich. I got the yeah, yeah.
Were you already that fit and trim?
Yes.
Wow.
Oh yeah.
That was
yeah.
a good move.
That was I had planned that like 3 years.
Oh,
and
clever.
I decided to be a gymnast as a young girl when I was 8, and then
I got into this shape in case something
Yeah.
comes up years from now.
Exactly, the long game. I was playing the long game.
They need an old, soft, chubby guy. I'm ready.
Alan,
Think ahead.
had we already done Pumpkinhead or no? We hadn't done it. We hadn't done it? It came after.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh, okay, I got it.
And Alec, you had worked with Jim on what, Piranha, maybe? Or,
No, I was working at Roger Corman's.
oh, right.
With Cameron.
Nobody here worked on Piranha but me. I don't even like to talk about it. Yeah.
miss that.
Missed that bullet.
Hey, first of all, we should thank the USC School of Cinema. What a great event this is. And what a great theater as well. The USC did not accept me into their film school, but I'm happy to be here tonight.
You and Steven Spielberg, you're in good company.
Yeah, that's exactly how I justified it.
It's hard for me to clap for you guys because I'm a Bruin. Through and through, I bleed purple and orange.
Thanks for coming, Ricco. You had a plane to catch? Anyway, sorry, Alec. How did you get involved with that?
So Cameron and I had known each other for about a year prior to starting to work on Battle Beyond the Stars, where I met Pat McClung here, and the Skotak brothers and Gail Ann Hurd. So we worked for, close to a year on that, and Jim kept talking about a script he had about a robot or something, a metal robot under a human skin. It made no sense to me. And I finally found a film school that would take me, so I decided to go to... That was UCLA. But I'll tell you what Cameron's parting advice to me was. He said, I'm going to go to film school, and he said, I think that's a big mistake. Who needs film school?
But you know what?
Who said that?
Cameron, and look how he turned out.
He told you that
Yeah.
you... Oh, boy.
So, you know what I think it was? I think he wanted to continue working with me, and I don't think I understood that at the time. But what he did do is he introduced me to Stan Winston when he was making Terminator. So he did, as we say, sent the elevator back down. So, and I took it to lingerie, 5th floor.
Are all you guys from film school here? Everybody?
It's
No.
audition of alums, students, and other people that just heard about the event.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. We have a mix.
Where'd you all come from?
One by one, yeah. Take your time.
I thought we were coming down here to kind of hear your questions rather than tell you our,
We'll get there.
What an
I know, I
impatient
think so.
guy.
Anyway,
What an
no, it's not going to
impatient-
happen, she said. No, it ain't going to
They're
happen.
saving up the good ones. All right, Pat, how about you? How did you get involved with this?
Is this on? Yes. They're all from UCLA. Like, I didn't go to film school. So I was doing miniature work, and I met Alec and Jim Cameron, and they were driving in from Orange County to Venice, and I think Jim still owes you $15 for gas. Anyway, but I got a call from Robert Skotak. He said, "Oh, Jim's doing something." And I went down and I read the script I had. He said, "Here's a script. Jim's coming in like an hour." I'm a very slow reader, and I read the script, and I knew Jim. I knew his pretty talented guy. He'd already done Terminator at this point. And I read it, and I thought, "Holy shit, this is going to be an amazing film," because I knew what he was capable of, and the rest was history. So
It was. If you ever
Yeah.
read the script, it is one of the few scripts that just reading, you totally smell the movie, see the movie. I remember having to put it down because I was like out of breath, going, "Jesus, this is frightening," just on the page. One of the most impressive things about Jim Cameron, and you tell me if this is true, he allegedly was simultaneously writing the script for Terminator 2, Rambo 2, I guess, and this. Like he had three
I
different
think he
computers.
would. At least two of them, yeah. He's pretty prolific.
The story I heard is
Blows my
that Fox had read his Terminator script, and then they asked him to pitch on this movie, on Aliens. And then he went in to pitch on it, and the pitch didn't go great, and they didn't like his ideas. So he didn't get the job, but then Terminator got pushed a year or something, or like 9 months, because Arnold was shooting Conan. And then Jim was just like so into this idea, he wrote 90 pages. And he like a 90-page like scriptman, so it was part script, part like treatment, gave it to Fox, and like, "This is awesome." And then they hired him for the job, and they waited till after he finished Terminator. It's the story that I heard.
He kept that secret because I didn't know that. Did you know that? Yeah.
I learned more stuff about this film on these panels. I swear to God.
Well, speaking of Jim, I mean, he's a genius, and I don't think he's ever made a bad movie. I hear he is very
Yes, he did.
tough. Which one?
Yes, he did.
Well, he got
I
fired for
was
that
in
one.
it. We were down in Jamaica, and our budget was $300,000, and it was an Italian kind of producer who was a real scammer. But anyway, so we probably had $150,000. And as wardrobe for me, I bought a waiter's outfit because I was playing a harbor cop. I bought a wig. The guy had chinos. He was my size with a stripe down the side. And I said, "Good enough." Paid him $75 for it. Real low budget. Anyway.
Wait. I wanted to hear from each of you guys what your experiences were like working with Jim. Like, because he's a master filmmaker, but I hear he's very tough on set. And
You're recording this. I want to be very careful about what I say.
he's in New Zealand. He's not going to see it.
He will so see it.
Who wants to start? What were some of your experiences working with Jim on this?
I'm turning my chair backwards. I ain't saying anything.
His reputation, he's so clear about his vision, and he has unbelievable skill set to like see it and then design the stuff. If the technology didn't exist, he would invent it, and he designed the prop. I mean, there were drawings of what I was just seeing of his invention. So I think the British, the British are a little bit more into manners than we might be. So they were happy. He was 29. How old was he when he made it? He was a kid. He was 29, and they were going, "Who's this, upstart?" But he was never anything but just focused, laser focused on getting every shot. And here it is. It's still a masterpiece.
Yeah, I never get that when people say he was hard to work with, because I didn't find him hard. I just found that he knew what he was doing. He knew what he wanted, and also any director is often preoccupied. I remember we were coming out of the AV one time, and we were talking about what we're going to do, and I said, "Okay, Ricco, you're going to lead it, but when you come out," he said, "I want you to come out, and I want you to take off, and then you run over there." And he said something. I said, "Listen, James, do I run left or do I run right?" He went, "Yeah." That was it. But I understood because his mind was always preoccupied with what's going to happen next. But I didn't really find him hard to work with, but I did find that he, as you said, had a clear view and was able to communicate that with actors. And also was able to give us enough room to play and find things ourselves. I mean, a lot of that stuff that happened at the breakfast table, a lot of that stuff was discovered at the breakfast table because he gave us enough room. I mean, a lot of that, the back and forth between Bill and Arturian Poontang, and she was a man and all that stuff. A lot of that stuff was just ad-libbed.
You know, it all begins with the script, that's for sure.
Definitely.
And Jim wrote, when I read Aliens, I thought I had read, the opening line was, space like the love of God, cold and remote. I thought I read that. It wasn't in the script. So the point I'm trying to make is that it was as if he wrote something that got you on a journey to start thinking like him. It was very well written. All his scripts were, so art. I can't wait to see what happens
It was
with
written as a lot of almost like haikus, half sentences, just words like coming at you. So even visually reading it, it was like a storyboard. It was just like you wouldn't bother with flowery sentences. Like what was the thing? The Doberman's playing or something? They described you.
Oh, that's right. Like Doberman's playing with
Yeah, like your relationship.
That was great.
Doberman's playing. It's just like dark, bam. It was just like a comic book, but
Yeah, you were able to sort of flesh out the character from the
and it makes it a faster read too.
Yeah.
Alec, Pat, what about you guys?
Well, I would say that Jim is very demanding, and he there it is. He's very demanding, but as long as you're there and you know that what he's trying to get is the very best possible result, then any of his roughness around the edges, you just accept it. It's not a big deal. It was a really good testing ground for me as a young person to like, you survive that, and if you're able to put that personality type into perspective, you can work with anybody. And I've kind of carried that through. I've worked with Paul Verhoeven, and I've worked with some really tough people. But tough people are the ones who make it very clear where you stand and what they're looking for. So, like, I'd much prefer that than a person who's very sort of sullen and introspective and doesn't give you much feedback.
When I worked with him on Titanic, there was a little, I had the two kids, and the little girl, I guess, had done something, but the little boy had just done a background in a McDonald's commercial. And when they did the line, his one line, and Jim said, "Okay, right, we're going again." He was like, "What? Didn't I do it? Okay." He did, and everybody started to laugh, and he said, "Quiet." Everyone quiet. And he went down, there were so many people there, and he just sort of went down to the little boy and said, have you ever, do you know how we make movies? And he goes, okay, so I'm going to do it once, and it's called The Master, and then you do it like 3 times maybe, and then I'm going to have you do it, and then I'm put it on your mommy, and he goes, now you think you can do that? Is that okay? And he was so quiet, and he was so sweet, and the little boy was like, okay. And then he goes back in, so.
And that kid today, Judd Apatow.
Exactly.
Master.
Let's talk about it. It was so much fun watching it on the big screen today. And the movie's just beautiful, and it's interesting watching from perspective. Like as a little kid, you're not thinking about how they did this and stuff. It just kind of is. But to like think of this movie before computer generated effects, like I really don't know how you guys did this stuff. Alec,
Did you say when you watched it as a little kid?
I saw this movie when I was 12, and I probably shouldn't have seen this movie when I was 12.
We're old.
It was
I saw it outside, 40th anniversary, so this was tell you something.
I told them before, this is, I think still today was the tensest movie I've ever seen. Like, it's just the scariest, tensest film, and I loved it. But watching it again tonight, Alec, I was going to ask you, I heard in your imagination, it feels like there's hundreds of aliens there. Is it true there are only like 5 suits?
Hey,
Yeah.
I think it was 6.
let me make a point about what you just said.
Okay.
If you take and do one scene at a time over, say, 2 or 3 months, and then you put it all together, you squeeze it down even more, and you're going to look at it in an hour and a half or 2 hours, just the energy compression is overwhelming. And We didn't do it all in a day or 2 hours, that's for sure.
Oh, but it was never leisurely. I just have this image of Jim would be filming something, and then he would run to another stage and work on miniatures and get that, and come back and do. It was a sprint, and it was 4 months.
But look at the power of that finished thing. It's taking months of energy, and not only that, but the energy it took to put it together, you know, and squeeze it into 2 hours. How could you not be impressed? Because they've suspended you. You know, you're done. You got to watch it. You know what I mean?
Well, one advantage Jim had was that he had done a short film, and this is how he got the job at Corman's. And he got some money from some dentists or lawyers, and he did this thing called Xenogenesis. And when I saw it, it blew me away. It had robots in it. It had lasers firing. So I think you were working with him about that time. But because of Corman's, he came in as a model maker, and he started shooting visual effects, and later he was art director on another crappy Corman movie, Galaxy of Terror. So he had been around visual effects, special effects, art direction, so he knew all the technical side. So when it came to Aliens, he was really smart about stretching the dollar, because a lot of the stuff we did in the visual effects were done with just almost junk. When everybody walked in, there were photos running here. I think you saw some of them. There's a picture of these old lamps. They burned everything out in the back for some reason in Pinewood. They lit everything on fire to get rid of it. But a lot of the debris from the miniatures, the colony complex, Bob Skotak and I went out and just literally got a wheelbarrow, and I said, hey, this is free, So Jim thought that way, and he was very smart about putting things together, the cheapest, because there really was a low-budget movie, and it looks like it's a huge budget Hollywood movie. And it really was Jim. And going back to the script, his script writing is so tight, and he has this sort of economy of words, and he gets his ideas across very clearly. And I was sort of lower on the food chain doing the model stuff, but I needed to talk to Jim. I'd go up and say, what do you want? And he could draw it for me because he's a really good artist. He designed most of the movie. The power loader, the weapons, the Queen, the dropship. So, yeah, and I worked on The Abyss and True Lies, and he could be difficult, but...
In Abyss, this is the thing that always amazes me. In The Abyss, and he learned, which is all underwater, and he learned, and that's where he got into scuba, to diving, he became a master of that, and then he ends up not only he invents and creates, designs the sub-pod that goes to the lowest point in the ocean that mankind has ever done. And he just did that. Like, it didn't exist, let me design that. He designed it, and then he went in it, and he did it. Like, okay, good for you. That's I made some beautiful eggs this morning. That's what I did.
If you think of Cameron as the wolf in Rome, and you have Romulus and Remus nursing on it, we're like more the Romulus and Remus. We walk in and the thing's already set up, so we have a different job to do and a different experience. Like we walk in, like look at what we're doing right now. We're walking into a room full of people.
Yeah, but it's rare.
I didn't set this up, you did. So, right. But in the Alien movie.
But to your statement about it kind of like holding its own even 40 years later. I remember probably about 10 years ago, I was flipping through the television and the movie was on, so I just thought, let me look at a little bit of it and see how it holds up. And I was surprised at that point that it did hold up so well. And I think the reason why was because he did use practicals as opposed to the special effects. Often when you see a sci-fi movie, and you guys know this if you're real sci-fi fans, you can almost tell what decade it was in by the special effects. But when you don't use special effects, now you have no idea. And I think James was really a master at that. And that probably came partly because he had that sort of foresight, but also being a low-budget movie. I think the movie was made for something like 18 million pounds or dollars, I'm not sure, but that was even low for that time.
Well, Jim knew all the in-camera stuff and the Skotak, so we didn't have the money to do things optically. So he really knew how he could stretch. And it's sort of, I look at movies of the era, the 80s, and the optical stuff is awful, matte lines and stuff. And this, I'm astonished at how well it holds up. Just everything across the board, the acting, the art direction.
If you go through it frame by frame, it's still almost impossible to tell when it's cutting to miniatures and when it's just so brilliantly cut.
That's what I wanted to ask you guys. The one shot that struck me today was when the whatever you call it, what's the ship that's flying down?
Drop
Yeah, the drop ship. When the vehicle comes out of the drop ship and starts driving, I'm like, I have no idea how they did that. Like, how did you guys do that shot?
I was done.
The drop ship was about this tall. It was 12th scale, and we had a little APC that would back into it. We had a whole set. But when you see it driving towards you, and you see the drop ship peeling off, that's the 12th scale drop ship, and the 5th scale APC in the foreground, and they're actually very close together, but because of the size and all the smoke in the air, it just totally looks like it's way back there.
Was there ever actually a full-size APC, or is that all
Yes.
miniature? Okay.
It went about 4
when
miles
it was
an
driving?
hour. Yeah, it was an airport tug, and it literally would pull 747s around. And it weighed literally tons. Yeah, and it could hardly go. They undercranked, which they ran the film slow to make it go because it only go like 5 or 6 miles an hour. The full size one, and then the miniature is what you see driving. When Ripley's driving up and down, and that's the.
And another great illusion with the APC is that if you stood next to it, like your head, you could look over the top of it practically. But somehow when you're inside and it's this different set, it's very roomy and spacious. and there's no way all those people would fit inside that thing. But it doesn't matter. And that's part of Cameron's boldness as well. He knows what he's going to get away with.
Well, let's get back to the creatures. We got distracted. So literally there were only 5 alien suits?
6, but
6.
Who's counting?
Okay. It's pretty amazing, though.
Yeah. Yeah, and there was one, we made one very tall, thin alien out of parts and pieces, and we kind of stretched it out just to make it look cooler. And that one's getting blown up left and right constantly. We'd patch it up, put squibs in it and shoot it again, drive over it, crush its head, fix it, do it again.
Wow. And is it true, I read this story, and maybe you know it, that the final scene with the alien queen in the room where you had all the bodies and the eggs all around, that you guys built that in like a warehouse someplace in London, and that they left the set there, that no one struck it. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Did no one strike that
until another film was shooting there? You guys know this?
No, which set are you thinking?
In the Queen's egg chamber?
Yeah.
I can imagine there was some goop left over.
Well, the interior of the atmosphere processing station was a power station called Acton Power Station, and it was used in Batman and piles of movies. And they left some of the set dressing, but that some of the junk glued to the walls to make it look like futuristic stuff. But
the story I heard is that some of the bodies or whatever that were like entombed in the walls, that they didn't strike them.
Oh, it might be.
The next thing that shot there was Batman, and then they came in to prep for Batman. Like, holy fuck, what are these things on the walls?
It's possible, yeah.
Anyway,
they save money by not striking.
I told you it was low budget.
So,
We can curse here?
I apologize for any children that are still. Lance, you can curse. I looked into it.
Now you're talking.
Well, one of the things I want to talk about is, to me, like, beyond the effects and the great script and everything, I think what makes this movie so great are the characters and the performances. And, like, to me, Jaws and this are the gold standard in terms of, like, I'm a writer, and when you go in on meetings and stuff that people reference in terms of, like, okay, we want to be like this, Aliens is the one that always comes up when you have a team, when you have like a group of characters, because I feel like all you guys were such great characters, and you really did care about everybody. I mean, I was so bummed when Burke was a bastard, because I'm like, I like that guy.
Well,
like, he's a nice guy.
Let's talk about that. That's your perspective, and that's fine. I don't see it that way. In a workplace, accidents happen. It's not uncommon. But first of all, Jim casts really cleverly, and then, as Ricco said, he lets the actors play. I mean, Bill Paxton, God bless him, I mean, he took that role and just knocked it out of the park. And people walk around and go, isn't it what what's the line? The line of his, that's a movie now.
Game Over Man?
Yeah, Game Over Man. It's like, that's because he said that. I don't even think that was in the script. That was just Bill being Bill, and he's kind of, he was wonderful, and we miss him.
I had met him because he worked for Corman's. That's where Jim knew him from. And he's in Terminator. But I was walking through the hallway in the production office, and he had done a audition for the part, and he knew Jim. It was the same sort of deal. And he goes, I don't know if I got the part, man. I don't know. I said, oh, you absolutely have. I didn't know. I just made it. So he always remembered that because you and Bill got the best lines. The bad
language. Was that in the script?
Some of you might have disagreed with that.
Well, the funny.
What are we going to use, man? Harsh language?
Was that in the script?
Yeah.
But it was a great, because you guys are here. It was a great cast, and Jim is really good at defining characters. They don't all, like a lot of movies. To me, they tend to blend together. Jim really sort of nailed each character. They're their own individual person, and everybody sort of redeems themselves. Well, except for
Let's discuss it.
Well, I heard one of the things which sounded so smart is that I heard they shot the beginning stuff where you meet the characters at the end of the shoot, and so you guys knew each other fairly well at that point. No, is that not true? Oh, the internet.
Yeah, I was going to say no. We no, that was we knew.
What's that?
No, we knew each other. No, but we got time to rehearse before they started shooting, so it was like a couple of weeks, which is very unusual.
We went for a little boot camp, maybe.
You guys you trained with the British Army or something?
British sergeant or something like that. Some British sergeant.
Two of the stuntmen who were in the film, Werbowski and I can't remember the other one, but they were in the SAS, the British SAS. So they trained us in urban warfare and arms, shooting guns, things like that, things that I had never done. So. And
I came in way after that, and these guys were all like bonding, and they were great friends. They had all this cool equipment, and I was just like the asshole with a notebook. I had nothing. I just had nothing to do. So I was already outside, just showing up. I was already the odd guy.
It was true. And then Sigourney showed up. She was working on another film in Europe. And so she also kind of came in, but we had all been hanging out with each other, and Ricco and me and Mark, who played Drake, and a lot of the other ones who were hired locally. So we would take Bill and Lance around. Yeah, and Michael wasn't there yet, but take them out and take them over to our apartments, our flats, and go out with them. So we had already bonded even before the film had started.
Lance, let's talk about, Bishop's such an iconic character, and I think it's such a fine line because you're playing an android that doesn't really have emotions, but it's like he's such a human character that makes you care so much about him that when he gets ripped in half, it's so heartbreaking at the end. Do you want to talk about sort of creating that performance and kind of what your intentions were?
I came up with a new joke about how did you create that performance? A lot of tension in it and everything else, and I said, well, I lost my cell phone. That's what I was using. I got no numbers. I can't find anybody. That didn't happen, but I'm just saying. Because I've been thinking about the whole language we use about how we do our work.
It's a secret. Don't tell them.
Getting back to the subject.
Keep it to yourself. Don't tell them your secrets.
You know what? I mean, I used some odd things, and they mostly were from my childhood, because I figured Bishop had the emotional life of a 12-year-old, and in the sense that he forgave you because he's going to know he's going to outlive you. So I'll forgive you. And then the other thing, things like that, where I wanted to, what? Not a bad idea. No.
I never thought the 12-year-olds are looking at us going, I'm going to outlive you. I get it. That's why they're smiling. Now I get it.
I even went so far as to, before I got to London, Jim had called me and said, we want to introduce Bishop in a certain way, like playing that knife thing. And knowing him, I had to get every knife I could find of a different style and work with it. because I had a month. So when I got there, they opened my suitcase, and there the knives were. And it was IRA era, right? So they weren't going to let me in the country. And Gail, I think, got me out, but anyway, and I kept my knives. Because I said, we're doing a movie, I'm not going to kill anybody. So,
Do you remember the lenses? The lenses that you brought?
the what?
The contact lenses that you had designed? Do you remember that? You had this. You were so excited. You had
Cat eye.
No, you had like these. You had
The eyes.
contact lenses with
Yeah,
two pupils on it.
I spent my last $1,500 on sclerals for my eyes. That I figured that when Bishop got excited, he would have two pupils in each eye. And Jim said, "Oh, let me see, put them on." And I put them on, and he said, "Okay, we'll try it. We'll shoot it tomorrow."
Did you?
Yeah, he shot it. And then he came to me next morning and said, "It looks scarier than the fucking alien. They're not using it." But anyway, I just went overboard at trying to find details that I could hang on to as an actor, so, and that was one of them. I even got some holographic labels for my character, and he said, "Well, they're not holographic if we're shooting them with film. They're flat. It looks like you printed it." No, I think all movies are an adventure, and the more you can, connect and try things and search. It's a search, an adventure and a search. And when you get lucky enough to get work, it's even a better search than sitting and looking at yourself in the mirror going, making faces. I mean, it's not about that. It's about living something. Anyway, did I answer your question?
Yeah. Jenette, watching the movie tonight, I was really struck is that I think the three biggest badasses in this movie are Ripley, Vasquez, and Newt. And it was really
Me?
and you.
No, he's a badass in it. No, I'm a servant. I wouldn't hurt a fly unless
You saved it.
unless you put my foot on your head.
But
That's weird.
But when they made this movie, that wasn't something that you often saw. I mean, Vasquez was such a badass. Like, what was the reaction you got from people when you said? Did you get little girls that came up to you like after seeing this movie? And
Well, yeah. I mean, the thing that I wanted to do with her was not to make her into a superhero cartoon character. I wanted to make her into, because then that's no fun. You say, "Oh well, she's a superhero." I have the same opinion that James has about superheroes. There's no risk. There's nothing. They're a superhero. She was a real person with something to lose, and she was, she had nothing to lose. I mean, that's why she was so brave, or seemingly brave, and. The reaction was amazing. I mean, because this was during the 80s, and like women had to be likable, all that kind of crap. And so I just said, I'm not going to make her likable, or you had to be relatable. They had to relate to you or something. And he said, don't worry about it. Just play her how you want to play her. I mean, he knew what my take was, but the reaction was amazing. There's little girls, little boys, gay men, straight men, lots of soldiers, and. Yeah, so she's an incredible character.
Yeah, speaking of which, though, being the year of the woman, James was so ahead on a lot of different things, not just on his movie making, but when you look at the casting of it, first of all, the lead it was the first action female lead. All the badasses, as you said, were female. The little girl, out of all of her family, she's the one that survives. I think he really was ahead of his time. And now we talk a lot about diversity in film and in the film industry, whereas James was there already. I mean, think about this 40 years ago and the cast that he put together and how he put them together. Yeah. Not quite.
well, the original was 40 years ago. This was a little bit less.
Okay, so
But no, I think that's such a good point. Well, Paul, I wanted to ask you too about when Jenette was talking about likability, because I think that was the thing with your character. Like you said, I really liked your character when that twist happened, and I guess it was a slow twist because he kept doing stuff. But what was your? did that affect how you played him? Like, were you trying to be like early on, like, okay, we need to really like this guy?
No, well, you know, I mean, I joked that, like, hey, I didn't think I was doing a bad thing. I don't think I went up there to kill people. But so in my head, I had a very clear purpose. I was working for the company, and I was not with them. I was the corporate guy. But, you know, to whatever extent he wanted to put somebody who he thought would be likable or you wouldn't suspect, it didn't work at all. Because I remember sitting there, like, in the first 2 minutes, people go, that's the guy, that's it. Look for a trouble. It's like the guest star on Star Trek. Oh, he's going to be dead very soon. There's something wrong right there. So, I mean, I didn't think that I was evil. I didn't think I was playing that. But I did think people did kind of catch on pretty quickly. Because the company man, you know, the company guy is always the bad guy. So there's nothing. So I would try, but from the very first scene, you know, when I introduced, I think that's the line, right? I work for the company, but I'm not a bad guy. It's like, yeah, you are.
But I also think that's why Paul's character was so effective, is because villains think they're just as justified by their action as the hero does about their action. So when you came on screen and you felt very justified in your actions, we believed you. And then later on, when we find out how bad your actions were, that's what's so evil about it. But you playing it the way you played it, I think was the brilliance of it, is because you did not play like a bad guy.
Well, you finished your thought.
I did.
Let's. I want to talk about Sigourney. So, for those of you that don't know, Sigourney was nominated for a Best Actress Oscar for her performance in this movie, which is something that rarely happens these days for movies that aren't just like serious dramas. I think it's such an amazing performance, and she's so great in this. What were all of your guys' experiences working with her?
It was unpleasant.
I didn't enjoy it.
Did you enjoy it? No. She was a lead. She was such a leader on the set in every way, and she was so generous and strong, and she was in the first one. You know, so she was it, but she was nothing but great. I mean, I think we all loved
definitely
her.
a leader. She would, she took care of everybody. We worked really long hours. It was really hard and cold, and it was hard work. And she stood up for everybody. You're beeping, Ricco.
What? Hey, it's Full Metal Jacket just called. You're in. Run, baby.
Why did they sit me next to him? Why?
Matthew Modine.
You know what Cameron told her? Jim told her that I was a Nazi. Bishop was a Nazi.
Bishop, not you.
Right? Oh, okay. And because of the shit that happened in her other world. But, and then I'm looking at her, why does she treat me so shitty? I just dropped the cornbread, that's all I did. And through the whole movie, she's like looking at me like, hairy eyeball, get away from me, you smell like a skunk. Did something to you, that kind of shit.
Now, I think,
and it hurt.
Sigourney was a leader, but it wasn't she didn't lead in a kind of masculine way. I think she kind of led in a nurturing way. And I remember after the film was over with, I remember thinking, if I'm ever a big star, I want to be like her on set. Because she it was never it's my show. It was very we. And I remember after the screening of it, we went to the Beverly Hills Hilton or something, and she had a little after party and invited the cast back. And my wife wasn't there. I was living in England at the time, and my wife was in England. I felt kind of bad, and she says, "Listen, come here." And she took me to a phone in her bedroom, and she says, "Call her." She says, "It's on 20th Century Fox." And then I'm dialing. As I'm dialing, she goes out and she comes back in with a bottle of champagne for me to sit and talk to my wife. That's what I'm talking about. This woman was a giver.
That's awesome. Something that I read about.
You got to be making money to do that, though.
It was on Fox. It was all on Fox.
Something I read recently I didn't know, because Michael Biehn is so great in this movie as Hicks. I heard that he wasn't the actor that was originally cast, and I don't know for how long, but another actor. 2 weeks. Okay. Can you guys? It's been a long time. Can you guys talk about what happened? Was there
Flip Wilson? It was Flip Wilson.
Does anybody know who the first Hicks was?
Yeah, it's not a
James Remar.
Who's a great actor.
Yeah.
James Remar. Yeah.
And because in the movie Hicks and I are really close friends, we're buddies. I really James and I really kind of bonded. You know, as an actor, you try and do that anyway. If you have a scene with somebody that you're supposed to be a good friend, you try and find that. And we did bond. And when he was removed from the film or left the film, I don't know how much we can get into what happened.
I think it's been a long time. You guys can talk about it if you want.
But I remember really being a little pissed off by it. And then when the next day, all of a sudden, we get this new guy, and I'm thinking, no, you know. And then when he started acting, he took a completely different way of doing it. I mean, James had this kind of smile on his face, this smirk, and he had this voice, and it was like a man's man. And then when it changed, I didn't feel him at all. And I remember I felt this was going to be a real challenge for me. But a week later, I got it, you know, and it made me appreciate actors who make different choices, and that just because your choice is different doesn't mean that it's better or worse. You know, it's a different choice, and it was completely different, but yet I could see how it worked in the end too. So I was really impressed by it.
And to his credit, Michael had worked with James Cameron before, so they had a rapport. But he literally flew in, went to the set, and jumped into the movie, which is not easy to do.
He told me James called him up and says, "Listen, I got a part for you to play the lead in this movie. You got to be here in 24 hours, so the decision is yours." And he had 24 hours to get on the plane and come over, and he knocked it out of the park.
And not everybody can do
that.
that.
Time. Yeah, so you got to Michael Biehn killed it.
You guys, in reshooting 2 weeks worth of stuff, were you guys happy that you got to have another crack at it, or were you like pissed? You're like, okay, I did this, I already nailed it, and now we have to like do this again?
I was pissed, to be honest with you. I was pissed, and I didn't want to reshoot it because I felt like, you know, if you do something, it's fresh and you get it right, but then redo it. It's kind of hard. And we didn't have to shoot everything over again, but we did have to shoot some scenes over again. And I
have an ex-wife, and I would never redo it. I know what you mean. I know exactly what you mean. You know, there's a longevity, and it's been 40 years or 35 years or whatever it is, and we've all kept going, and we'll all keep going. I think I understand more about movies that I've done after I've done the movie, because I'm so busy doing it and trying to survive and getting over the knots in your stomach because you're facing something that you have to do. Well, afterwards, though, philosophies flow. You know, and it becomes its own generator of
It's got to be really something to be you, I would think. You're just an interesting cat. You are an interesting cat. No, you, Lance. You're just like the wise saint.
You and I didn't get along at all.
No, we didn't, but we will soon.
He was saying shit to me like, I would talk about something, and he'd go, "What?"
Yeah.
It was that constant, like...
No, I meant that as a compliment, that just the magnitude
I said, drive a pull-over, I'm on out.
Rico, help me out. I was complimenting
you.
See, again, I meant it as a good thing, and I was taking
Paul,
wrong.
I genuinely liked you.
I will say this. And when you're working on a film, there's a lot of downtime. It's rush to wait. And someone once asked on one of these panels what was the most enjoyable part about the movie. And one of the most enjoyable parts I found about the movie was the camaraderie that we had as our team of Marines. But also, just listen to this guy, the way he sees life is very different. Paul.
Just doing a job, just working for the company, Rico, trying to bring in the bacon.
I want to open up some questions, but I have a couple more for you guys. So, I want to talk about the loader. I mean, that's such an amazing sequence at the end. And again, I don't know how you guys fully did that. How much of that was miniature and how much of that was sort of puppeteering?
Well, if you watch the power loader, when they had a full-size mock-up that was actually vacuum plastic, and there was a bodybuilder inside, actually standing behind, Sigourney or whoever was here.
Let's act it out.
This is a scene I've never seen.
If you had an X-ray of it, that's what he was.
Somebody behind it was moving.
He was inside of it. He was actually inside of it. And if you look, there's two yellow antennas that actually had cables going up, and they're disguised. You can barely see. I can see it because I know.
So when it's walking,
so
that's a guy
size.
holding it. Okay.
And then we had a quarter scale miniature for the whole Queen and Power Loader fight that was this big and a whole set.
Was it lightweight that you could
Yeah.
actually lift?
It was all vacuum formed. It was thin. It looked like metal, but it was actually thin
And there's
plastic.
some great sound effects that make
Yeah,
you buy
and it was our special effects guy who did all that stuff.
John Richardson,
John Richardson.
and his team built.
Is that story true about Caterpillar trying to sue him?
I never heard that. I think they would love that, right? I think they must.
They did?
I can't imagine Gail would just.
Because I thought they
Let's
came in with lawyers and everything else.
I don't know, maybe.
The story I heard was that Jim had notebooks from when he was in high school with all the drawings of that very machine. And when the lawyers came in, they all unpacked their briefcases, and Jim handed them his notebook from high school. And
Well,
they
it's actually from
packed their shit up and left.
a magazine. It's from a magazine.
That's what I heard.
In the 70s, because we're about the same age, and on Battle, we liked all the same technology and stuff. And I said, "Is the power loader from Analog Magazine?" He said, "Yeah."
Oh, I think there's also a major Matt Mason toy
Yeah.
from the 60s that was very similar. This was a NASA concept of enhanced, machinery that enhances your strength. So, but he just built on it and turned it into like the Caterpillar and the, with the rotating light. He just made it very industrial. And I think one of his geniuses is that he can scan the landscape and like pick out little shining objects and put them all together in a brand new, fresh way that just dazzles you. My daughter is here, and I don't think she's ever seen any films that I've ever worked on. And she saw the end of this scene. She's like, "How the heck did you do this?" She didn't say heck. She swears. But how is that? What is that? So she's full of these questions, which I'll be answering. Honey, later tonight when I'm talking to you, after bedtime stories, if you're not too scared, I'll tell you exactly how it's done.
Well, Alec, there's so many things in the movie. I don't know how you did. What was the hardest creature effect that you had to deal with?
I think the one that intimidated us or had us most worried was the Queen, because we all know how to make creatures in suits, and H.R. Giger had brilliantly established the look of the alien in the first film, so that's going to work. That all those concepts are going to work. We just had to make an alien warrior suit that was a little more stunt friendly, that could have a greater dynamic range to it. And that's actually why the warrior does not have the clear dome on its head, like Ridley Scott's version. We were planning to do that, and Jim looked at it and said, "I think these things are going to shatter, because I'm going to have these people rolling all over the place." And he said, "Lose it." And that was that. There was back in the time when there was no studio involvement. You didn't have like, a CC list of people who had to sign off on the director's decision. He would just go, "I don't like that, and we won't do it." "All right, that's fine." And so you could move forward in a very efficient way because the guy knew what he was doing. And Stan Winston knew what he was doing.
Were there not studio notes during production looking at that?
I was never aware of that. Now, granted, I don't know why I would have been aware of it, but it's also at a time where you just didn't have, like, I don't even think we had a fax machine at that point. We may have had some bleary faxes. We'd take Polaroids of some sculpture we're doing, and we'd put it in the Xerox machine, and then you'd run that through the fax machine. And Jim would go, "I can't tell what the hell I'm looking at. I'll either mold it or I'm coming out and going to look at it." So you had a lot of direct access to him, which was wonderful. But that Queen was the one that we were worried about, because nobody had done anything like that before.
How tall was the Queen? I remember being really impressed when I saw
think
it.
her face stood about 12 feet off the ground, and then but the way it's shot, people think she's 40 feet tall.
Well, it ripped me in half. You can see the height.
Yeah, well, she's up
And
in,
I had to act backwards too. which
yeah,
is
you
really
had a
weird.
lot of, we put you through a lot of bad stuff, Lance. I just want to once again publicly apologize.
Lance, you want to talk?
I forgive you.
I gotta say one thing. One of my favorite days. It was a very difficult film for the visual effects side, and we didn't have a whole lot of fun. But when you get cut in half, the shot of your torso, which was a rubber puppet that the Stans guys made.
Watch what you say. Yeah.
No, the rubber. But Alec was tossing. He would toss this thing. So you see it land on the ground after the queen, throws your top, and it would land like this. It would land like that. It was hilarious. And actually, those takes are. When we did the DVD things, I told the Fox guys, and they found it. They found the outtakes, and so. Not because he didn't print all of them, but it was one of the few fun.
But that was one of the great things about what Lance did and Sigourney's like that. Like I made a cocoon for you at one point that we either never shot it or we did shoot it. Okay, yeah, not in the film, but I do remember.
I wear a
working
40
with you.
regular in a cocoon, by the way. So that was,
In the car on the way to Pinewood. He did.
But Lance would come to the shop first of all because he's a big supporter and he's an artist himself, so he loves to see what's going on and he loves to talk about process and all that stuff. So that was cool. But he was also looking at what we were building. Tom Woodruff and I made the bishop puppets and did that effect. And he would say, "Well, how's it work? What's it do?" And then when we were shooting the effects stuff, he is making mental notes of how it moves, and he incorporated that into his performance. So he had a much more seamless blend between the. It wasn't like he was in his dressing room waiting to be called, and then say, "What do I do?" Or that, no, this is how it should be. Your marionette puppet has to match my movements, which is oftentimes an impossible task. So it really helped make the sequence better.
Cool. Ricco, I think you need to go in a minute, right?
I do, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do the rest of you guys mind staying for a little and we'll open up for some questions?
We should all make sure he gets to his car
Oh,
safe.
you question.
Why don't we just all take 10 and make walk this?
Because it's starting to feel like I'm looking
Full
for
Metal
my
Jacket.
next
You don't want to be
job.
Cooper.
We'll take a couple audience questions and we'll wrap up. Who's got a great question? You seem very excited there.
Well, I wanted to ask Ricco too.
Oh, hurry up, this is your moment.
So, I heard that your chest play was personalized. I want to know, Ricco, what was your inspiration? And then Janet, I read siempre, which is Spanish for always. I want to see what your inspiration was, given that you play a Latina.
I was the mother of my kids' name is Heather, and I was trying to, because it's real metal, right? And I'm trying to scratch it in, and I'd already drawn the heart, and I got halfway through, and I realized I am never going to be able to write this whole word. So I put head, because I would call it head. But I got a lot of guys thinking that, hey, is it he?
Ricco Ross, ladies.
Okay, we'll take two more questions. Yeah, you in the back. Right back.
Actually, I want to answer her question.
Oh, yeah, well,
Yeah.
go ahead.
So the birthplace, it said, el riesgo siempre vive. El riesgo siempre vive. And that was from a book of Chicana poetry that I had read. And it was a line that was on a graffiti gang member written on a wall. And I thought it was kind of very, there's the risk never dies. No, yeah. Thank you.
Cool. So that was, sorry, I missed that because he was leaving. So Jim let you guys all decorate your, oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, and the lockers as well. So, yeah.
That's cool. Yeah, you over there on the side.
I know this will be totally different for the effects guys, but for the actors, being that it was pretty low budget, the question's kind of twofold. As actors, did you feel that in the production, or was that like outside of the realm of what you were concerned with? And also, was it obvious that you guys were working on maybe something special? Did you know that at the time?
Yeah, it certainly didn't feel low budget. I mean, it looked huge. I mean, there was just so much going on, and I was surprised. I only found out tonight that it was an $18 million movie. I went, which makes it all the more impressive. I think we all knew it was going to be great. As I was saying, reading the script, you knew it was great, and you knew it would be a hit. I don't think any of us would imagine that 35 years later we're still here talking about it. And you meet people who watched it every Saturday for 30 years. It's like, really? Really? You should get out of the house more often. But I don't think even James Cameron would have imagined, I don't know, but it's quite impressive how this has stood up.
It's true. You know what? It's all about budget, right? Being able to make a movie. That's why mimes don't have any props. They have no budget, so they make it all up, right? It's like crap. It's a crap movie, but it's a street movie.
Right, you never see a mime go over budget. That's absolutely true.
I don't know what I'm talking about.
Absolutely right, Lance.
Okay, well, we should let them leave. One last, yeah.
Make it good.
What was the one thing you used during the movie that when you had it, thought, I'm taking this home? What is it?
Did any of you guys, there's some prop or something that you're like, oh, I need to take this with me?
Mine was
Taking
Jenette
this home.
Goldstein.
Yeah, like prop or something you take from the movie.
Couldn't get it. Could not get it.
Did you take any props from this movie?
No, I didn't take that. I wish I had.
No, I was sick of the movie by the time I finished.
Mine's real quick. Mine's real quick.
Yeah, you.
Can we please hear you say, let's rock, please?
What if Lance says it? Would that be just as good?
I'm a really shy person. People say that.
Maybe Lance Henriksen would do his version of this line.
What?
Let's rock. Just say, let's rock, and pretend you're Jenette. Toughen up.
All right. There was a request to hear Jeanette's line, "Let's rock," and then Paul thought maybe you would do a great job.
I think you could do it good. I never said let's rock.
Exactly. That's why it would be so exciting to finally say, let's rock. There you go.
Hey, there you go. All right, well, let's have a big round of applause to these guys for coming down here and being with us tonight. That was awesome. And thank you guys all for coming.